For our featured program today, Tim Sandry. The Bloomington Sustainability Coalition is about influencing the behavior of all people who live and work in the city of Bloomington and live more sustainable lives, thereby making the city of Bloomington the world a more sustainable place. In October 2016, the Bloomington City Council unanimously established the Bloomington Sustainability Commission to focus on environmental sustainability in the areas of energy, carbon, surface and groundwater, solid waste, and ecological land use. In 2017, the council appointed 9 members, and in March, Tim Sandry was elected to the first chair of the commission. Tim is currently retired and volunteers his time on things that he is passionate about. After about 30-some years in information technology, he is now devoting his time to organizing like-minded people to work towards a sustainable future. Please put your hands together for Tim.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's really an honor and privilege. It is very appropriate, being that this group is really focused on youth and promoting youth, that you are also interested in sustainability, because the reason why I am passionate about this is not so much for me, but it's for my children and hopefully grandchildren. We in this room, many of us, are not going to see some of the devastating effects that will happen if we don't make changes to the way that we live, but certainly our children and our grandchildren will. Now I have a question for you. This is the interactive part of the presentation. So before you heard about this event today and that there was someone from the Sustainability Commission coming to speak, how many of you knew that there is a Sustainability Commission? Yeah, okay, I guess we have some work to do to get the word out. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a brief overview of the Commission, provide some current indicators and status in each of the areas of sustainability that we are focused on, discuss a few of the initiatives that we've got going on, suggest some key things that you can do. This isn't just about kind of learning things. This is about, hey, here's some things that you can do in your own life to be more sustainable. And you'll also find that in many of those cases, you can save money. It's very interesting that as we look at sustainable and being more sustainable, there's often a cost benefit to doing that, not only for the environment, but for the pocketbook as well. It makes our pocketbooks more sustainable. And talk about, community engagement. So, quick history. As was mentioned, 2016, the City of Bloomington, the City Council went through a strategic planning process, and they identified environmental sustainability as one of their top priorities. Out of that, the City Council decided to form a sustainability commission. It was seated in 2017. It's made up of 10 members and includes, and our ordinance states that at least a majority of the members have to have deep expertise in at least one area of sustainability. So it's not only a panel of people who are passionate about this issue, but it's also a panel of people who have deep expertise in these issues as well. We have one of the seats that's reserved for a city council member, which is Councilmember Lowman, which is the only commission that has that as part of its ordinance, and we also have a youth member, which reminds me that the youth, we will be replacing the youth member who will be graduating from high school, Claire Carlson. And we will be shortly sending out a notice that for applications to fill that seat. So keep your eyes out. If you know someone, a young person, who you think might be a great person, keep your eye out for that and make sure that they know about the application once it comes out. All right, so this is the language from our charter. in terms of what it is that, that we are up to. And in a nutshell, our mission can probably be summed up as follows. We are about influencing the behavior of everyone who lives and or works in the city of Bloomington to live a more sustainable life for the benefit of current and future generations. So, as we all know, behavior change is hard. To get people to change their behavior is hard. So let's get down to the bottom line. Sustainability is somewhat of an ambiguous term. It means many different things to different people. Our charter clearly lays out that it's environmental sustainability that we are concerned about. And it includes these 4 areas up here. And under each of these are some of the behavior changes that we are currently promoting. So what we're asking you to do, get a home energy audit or a audit at work. Do the retrofit. It doesn't help much to get an audit if you actually don't do the actions. Buy an electric car or drive less and bike more. Sign up for wind source or a solar garden. Underwater, use less water, especially for your lawn. We'll get into that in just a moment. Use salt sparingly in the winter, and I'll show you why that's important. Convert your lawn to native plantings, rain garden, or an alternative turf other than bluegrass, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Solid waste, keep recycling. We're doing a great job around recycling, keep doing it, but be conscious about what you're putting in there, because we've got a lot of contamination, which is making our recycling less valuable. Drop off your organics, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Recycle your textiles, which is something that will be coming soon. And use curbside cleanup sparingly. I know it's really popular, but I'm going to explain why it's really, we got to be very careful with that. And under ecological land stewardship, again, think about converting your lawn to native plantings and so on. And visit our natural open spaces here in Bloomington and get involved in helping to preserve what we have. So that's a lot to ask, and obviously we can't do all this at once. Pick out something that is interesting, maybe is easy, and do it, and we'll continue to remind you about what things you can do and how you can go about doing them. Specifically, I'm going to do a quick review of each area of sustainability, briefly describe the current situation in Bloomington, what the Commission is doing, and reinforce a couple of things that you can do. Most of this is focused on the residential side, but we are also engaged with businesses in many of these areas as well. Here's another audience interaction piece. So how much carbon do you think the city of Bloomington generates on an annual basis? So, and this is in metric tons. So how many think that maybe it's 250,000 tons? How about 1 million tons? 1 million tons a year, okay, we've got a couple of hands there. How about 2.5 million, okay? And how many think 5 million? All right. Well, let's take a look. Each year, the city of Bloomington releases over 800,000 metric tons and from natural gas and electricity. And if you add in transportation, it gets us well over 1 million tons a year. So those of you that said 1 million tons, you are correct. One of the things that when we start talking about really big numbers, it's hard to visualize. What do you mean? What does that look like? Well, 1 million tons. It looks like 10 of these. Or it looks like 200,000 of these. Or it looks like 2 million of those. So it gives you a sense as to the magnitude of what we're churning out into the atmosphere on an annual basis. So during 2017, the Commission and a group of community members that was drawn from residents, education, the city, business, worked with Xcel Energy and something called Partners in Energy. Thank you, Brain, for checking out there for a moment. Which the City Council approved at the end of last year. We came up with what we call the Bloomington Energy Action Plan. And the goal is that we will reduce carbon emissions from electricity and natural gas by 75% by 2035. That is a huge goal. So how do we get there? Well, part of it is a gift from Xcel Energy because they are rapidly greening their grid. So as a matter of fact, if we did nothing, we would achieve 30% of our goal just by the virtue of the fact that Xcel Energy is greening up their grid. But we have to do more than that. So there's, it's Xcel Energy greening up the grid. It's conservation, right? Get the home energy audits done, do the retrofits. Get your business audited, from an energy perspective, and do the retrofits. And thirdly, looking at renewable energy, whether it's putting solar panels on your house, subscribing to a solar garden, or signing up for wind source. So we've got a couple of things that the commission is focused on: 850 home energy squad visits over the next 24 months, 850 renewable energy subscriptions, wind source and solar gardens, and some work with multifamily dwellings over the next 24 months. The first goal, the 850 home energy squad visits, we are on track for that. Not so much with the wind source and solar gardens, and we're just starting to work with some multifamily dwellings. So what you can do, home energy squad visits, and getting to net zero, essentially, which is signing up for wind source or solar garden. And again, there are links there, and those links should be on the half sheets that got passed around. So next, solid waste. As I said before, we're doing a pretty good job in the City of Bloomington in terms of recycling. And you can see that, right? Because when you drive down the street, on garbage collection day, a lot of times you see a big recycling container and a little, and a little trash container. So we're doing great from that perspective. But the next target is organics. About 30 to 40% of what we put in the trash can is actually food waste. Food waste is really bad in terms of the waste stream. If it goes to a landfill, it generates methane, which is 100 times more powerful in terms of a climate gas than carbon is. Or if you send it to the burner, well, food waste is mostly water. So trying to burn water, it makes the burner much less efficient. So the commission started, and how many of you have heard about organics drop-off? Okay, how many of you have signed up for organics drop-off? All right, so we've got a few people that we can encourage here. So the Bloomington Sustainability Commission worked with city staff to set up 2 different organic drop-off locations. And again, on that half sheet, it gives links as to how to sign up and where these locations are. In addition, we have the Hennepin County drop-off. They take organics. So when you're taking other stuff there, you can drop off your organics there as well. And we will also be announcing shortly a textile recycling. Textiles make up 10 to 15% of the waste stream, and they are recyclable. So, curbside cleanup. Yeah. Yes?
Textiles, you mean like old clothing?
Yeah, rags, sheets, whatever, yeah.
Or tons of material?
Yeah, exactly.
That used for sewing?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so this is an artist's rendition of the proposed landfill that Burnsville is looking to build. And it will be taller than Highland Ski Hill and taller than Buck Hill. So what has this got to do with curbside cleanup? Well, every year, the curbside cleanup program sends 1,500 tons of garbage to the landfill, or in the future, to help build that mountain. So, and that's equivalent to 300 elephants. 300 elephants every year going to the landfill. So the weekly trash, pickup that you put out every week, that goes to a burner. But the curbside cleanup goes to the landfill, right? So the normal trash goes to the burner. The curbside cleanup goes to the landfill. Much of that can be recycled. Matches can be recycled, carpet can be recycled, couches can be given to bridging, those sorts of things. So and many things that get put out at curbside can be put in the normal trash. You just happen to be cleaning out your basement and you just put it all out, right? So the commission is we're actually doing a waste stream study right now to figure out what are all the things in there. And then as we find things that can be recycled, coming up with alternative ways for people to get rid of those things as opposed to putting them out on the curbside. All right, current water situation. So how much water, this is the interactive part again. So how much water does the city of Bloomington use on an annual basis? All right, so we're talking about gallons here. So how many think 800 million gallons? Too low, okay. 3 billion, okay. 4 billion, all right. And 8 billion, all right. And the answer is we use approximately 3.8 billion gallons of water on an annual basis. That's a lot of water. And again, it's kind of hard to visualize that. Well, that's about the same amount of water as contained in Lake Harriet, which is 3 miles in diameter and about 85 feet deep. And we clear that in the city of Bloomington on an annual basis. The problem is that 80% of this comes from an aquifer that is drawn down by multiple cities in the metro area, and the rate at which we are drawing it down is faster than it's being recharged. This is not a sustainable operation. So what is water used for? Well, guess what? 50% of it is used for watering our lawns. And of that, about 1.75 billion gallons is wasted. Wow. Because people water too often, or they water at the wrong time. It just evaporates. So from a pocketbook standpoint, you're paying 25% of what you're paying for water is just evaporating away. So you could save money if you reduce how much you water. So the city of Bloomington is looking at a water plan for the next 10 years that reduces our water usage by 10% by 2028, which on average that's 38 million gallons a year. So it's a big ask. So what you can do, and again, this is on the half sheets, be smart about how you're watering. There's links there that you go to the website and it tells you about that. One of the big things, if you have an irrigation system, smart water controllers. Costs about $400. You'll pay for it in about 2 months of your water bill if you've got a big lawn that you're irrigating. Surface water, yes?
I'm just curious if there's any other cities around here that subsidize, sell water below cost to the majority of its citizens, as we do in Bloomington, by doubling it at 600, which is the average family of 4, which means everybody under 600 is getting below cost water. Yeah,
I haven't looked at that. Yeah, it certainly would be something that we could take a look at. All right, surface water. We all saw what happened with Normandale Lake, right? And the issue here is that all the stuff that we put on our lawns flows into the water stream, flows into our lakes and into our streams. What we're looking for is to, Kentucky bluegrass is not a native species. Requires water, requires phosphorus to really do well with. So what we're encouraging people to do is look at alternatives. Alternative turf grass like fine fescue, or converting your lawn to more native plantings, rain gardens, those sorts of things to get away from this. The other issue is that 9 Mile Creek is currently listed as impaired for chloride. Chloride. It's kind of a dangerous thing because it kills off the aquatic species and it's really hard to get out once it gets in. And there's concern about it impacting the groundwater. So where does chloride come from? Road salt. So the City of Bloomington itself has been a leader in terms of reducing the amount of salt used, but commercial applicators, parking lots for churches, for commercial, whatever, they use a lot because they're afraid to get sued. And so the commission is working with both residents and commercial entities to try to educate people on how they can use less salt. All right, so what you can do, there's some things that I've already mentioned up there. So get educated on road salt. Take a look at how your lawn, see what you can do to reduce nutrients. And lastly, audience participation. How much of the City of Bloomington is set aside as parks, especially natural open spaces? So if you think of all the acreage in Bloomington, how much of that is natural open spaces? How about 10%? How many people think it's 10%? All right, 20%. All right, 30%? 40%. All right, and the answer is over 30% of Bloomington is natural open spaces. We're talking about places like Highland Park, the Minnesota River Valley, the Anderson Lakes, all those, Normandale Lakes, all those areas. And it's one of our, there are very few cities, if any, in the metro area that has as much of its land set aside as natural open spaces. And it's one of the best kept secrets, I think, including for Bloomington residents in many cases, I think. So the commission is working on an effort to catalog and evaluate the ecological health of all these areas because many of them have become overgrown with invasive species. And this is a forerunner to putting together a long-term plan for how do we maintain and restore these over time. So, lastly, how do we partner with you? I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today to help educate you a little bit about the circumstances that we're in, what we're up to, and as you think that this presentation would be useful for, perhaps you have a church group that's very dedicated to this, or you have a Boy Scout troop who would like to learn about this, let me know. I'd be happy, one of us from the commission would be happy to come out and talk because we are about changing the behavior of everyone that lives and works in the City of Bloomington to be more sustainable. The only way we're going to do that is having conversations like this. It's not going to be through emails and those sorts of things. It's going to be through face-to-face conversations. So with that, thank you. Okay.
You mentioned about 1/3 of the City of Bloomington is in parkland, and we're all blessed with that and enjoy it. I just noticed a lot of dead trees in our parks. Just walking around Lake Normandale yesterday. Big tree down due to the storm or whatever.
Yeah.
What impact does that have on the environment? And is the city planning to clean those up or just let them rot because it would be ecologically better?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on the circumstances. First off, are they blocking anything? But I think that in many cases, I think the issue is naturally we should let them just be. part of the issue is that we have a lot of invasive species that are taking over, and prohibiting those trees from regenerating. Like we have an oak savanna, a lot of the oak trees are very, very old. There are very few young oak trees, and as those oak trees die out, then it's just invasive species that are taking over. So those are the kind of what we need to figure out how to deal with. Yes.
So I have two quick questions. So first of all, are you working together with like the Hope or like Sustainability Club of Jefferson? Because I think they mentioned that once at one of the walkouts. And then the other question was how possible are like solar cells on like, for example, Jefferson or like other public like buildings or community buildings, since they have like those flat roofs, so they're kind of very good for that.
The first one is, are we working with Hope? Yes, as a matter of fact, Claire Carlson, who is kind of the leader of the Hope group at Jefferson, sits on the commission. She is our current youth representative. So yes, we are working and very anxious to continue to work and see if we can kind of help foster the expansion of Hope, because I think we need to tap into the energy of young people to make this happen. The second question was
solar cells.
Solar cells. We have had conversations with the superintendent of schools. They are looking at that. One of the issues is that before they can do that, they have to actually rebuild some of those roofs because they aren't, but as they do that, I think that they are planning, I think I've heard that they are planning on doing that starting with a school next year. And we certainly are going to try and encourage that with businesses within Bloomington. All right, thank you.